Nigeria, by extension Africa, battles a growing youthful population, and with little or no meaningful engagement, leaves a ticking time bomb on our hands. We are a blessed continent with great wealth, both in people and material. Our focus on ways remains driving conversations that affects us all. Topics in the news, social concerns, politics, leadership, governance, empowerment, resource management, conflict management, finance, SME sustainability, technological innovation, food security, health, education, brain drain, our well-being, citizenship, and much more. Our goal is to continuously drive these conversations, keep them burning at the table to effect a positive change, both for our nation and continent. Ways, what are you saying, has a secret ingredient that completes the conversation every single episode, and that ingredient is you. Our past conversations shaped our yesterday. To shape our tomorrow, we must keep talking. So, I want to hear you. Be a part of our live conversations Mondays through Fridays. And let's all have our say. Taxation is a fundamental pillar of economic development, providing the government with revenue to fund public services and infrastructure. However, Nigeria's tax system has long struggled with challenges such as low compliance, complex regulations, limited public awareness. Additionally, the duplicity of taxes has further complicated tax administration. So to address these issues, the government has introduced tax reforms aimed at improving revenue generation, simplifying tax administration, and ensuring fairness in the system. A recent public hearing on tax reforms has intensified discussions on how these taxes or these changes will affect individual businesses and economic growth in general. So it's another beautiful week, another beautiful episode on your favorite primetime show, Ways. My name remains Osaiwa Mesale, and today we're discussing tax reforms and the Nigerian citizen. And of course, we have our guest, Etuk. He is the programs manager at Order Paper. He will be joining me much later. But first, remember, Ways is all about you. You are the why in Ways. So be a part of our live conversations Mondays through Fridays, yes, and keep us, be in the loop of everything. You can also head on to our YouTube channels at Official Upgrade TV. Hit that subscribe button, like, share, and invite your families and friends to join the show right now. When I open the phone lines, I'd really love to hear your thoughts on this topic. And also, you can join us via WhatsApp. Just send an add me to WhatsApp. We'll add you via video. As always, let me allow you to ponder on my quote for the day. It says, the new rates proposed in the Nigeria tax bill exempts individuals who earn 800,000 or less annually from paying any income tax. In effect, every minimum wage earner in Nigeria would be exempted from personal income tax, the proposed tax reform bill. Now, yes, I'll do all of these conversations. We'll delve into it much later. But first, let me run off on a break. When I come back from that break, I want to let you in on my news interest for the day.
Tell us you're a Nigerian without saying a word. Energy security is one of the most pressing issues for many developing countries like Nigeria. And if there's going to be any meaningful progress, addressing our energy issues is non-negotiable.
I need to see light from my house. Make them do something.
Band A is expensive. I literally have to turn off all my appliances just to reduce costs.
We need light.
Introducing the Energy Outlook, your go-to show for everything energy. Every week, we'll bring you the latest insights, innovation, and in-depth analysis of Nigeria's energy sector. From policy discussions to regulatory insights, we'll analyze the key decisions influencing growth and sustainability in the energy sector. We'll bring you the human stories behind the headlines, giving you a personal perspective on the broader energy challenges. Join me every Friday at 6 p.m. for the Energy Outlook, your guide to the future of energy, where energy means business.
All right, thanks for staying with me. I'm I'm going to start with, I was ordered, I was offered 5 billion bribe to impeach Fubara. That's the Rivers State Chief of Staff. So his name is Edison Ehie. The Chief of Staff to the suspended State Governor Simlaye Fubara has alleged that he was offered 5 billion to coordinate the impeachment of his principal. Speaking on Channels Television on Sunday Politics, he claimed that he has evidence of the bribe offered to him on his phone. I can also open my phone to show you in the beginning of October 2023 when they approached me with a 5 billion with a bribe of 5 billion naira. It is here on my phone. It was for impeachment. Impeachment rather. It's here. I have it, and I have printed it and distributed it in case in their evil imagination they decide to attack me. I already have a son and a brother, he said. He said this offer was made while he was serving as majority leader of River State House of Assembly. And he also denied claims that he orchestrated the October 30th, 2023 bombing of the River State Assembly complex on Fubara's order. Of course, this allegation was made by the former head of service in the state, that's George Nwaeke, during his own press conference last week, Friday. He had alleged that he witnessed a bag of money being handed over to this chief of staff at the government house, and and that was the operation, what it was meant for. Okay, so yeah. There are still stories going around about River State. Is never ending. But 5 billion naira bribe, though, hey, Jehovah. You know, when I saw that 5 billion naira bribe, I said, gone are the days where bribe used to be like 2 million, 3 million. It moved up to hundreds of millions. Now we are seeing bribes in billions. This is really, really, really sickening. And it is really, really very sad how far we have degenerated. It's so sad. I'll move on to my next story. And this is, of course, the Senate President Akpabio condemning the killing, and he's calling for justice. There are so many parts of this story that I would like to unpack, but I'm just thinking, you know what? I have Randy Peters coming on Wednesday. We're going to unpack some of these conversations because there is a long history of people that have been crying for justice in Uromi based on the kidnapping, the killings, and all of that. But they couldn't find justice, and they couldn't find anything. And all of a sudden now, something has happened because why? Government was negligent, so they took laws into their hands, which I am not supporting. I strongly condemn it, right? However, they took laws into their hands, and they have this issue around the people that were killed in Uromi has come up, and all of a sudden everybody is now calling for justice. I think it's such an unfair thing, you know, for both the people that have suffered over the years and even the people that have lost their families. But the Senate President has condemned the murder and is describing it as a senseless act of violence and is unacceptable and having no place in our society. So hopefully we'll see it, how they would, you know, come about the thorough investigation. One good thing that the Edo State Governor, I think he did, he visited Kano State Governor. I saw pictures today where he went to pay a visit to the Kano State Governor. Because, you know, I posted a video on this particular Uromi case on my TikTok. It is really alarming what I saw. I have over 1,000 comments, and, you know, a lot of those comments were just hateful. Oh, we're going to, there'll be a retaliation, there'll be this, there'll be that. You know, there's just so much going on. And I think, you know, at this point, really, we need to wake up and tell ourselves the truth, right? There's a lot going on. People are committing all sorts of crime because they feel like, you know, this is just the ground where nobody calls anybody to order. There's no rule of law. That's what I believe, right? But condemning it is good, but beyond condemnation, we need to act. on it. And so just to move on to this and still stay on the killings, right? Victims of the killings in Uromi, the families have come out to speak, and the bereaved family members, in separate interviews with Daily Trust at the weekend, they shared their harrowing details of the victims' last moment, and the travelers who were said to be hunters were on their way from Port Harcourt to Kano for the Salah celebration when some vigilantes intercepted them and lynched them on suspicion that they were kidnappers. So the families have come out, to talk, and they are also seeking for justice. I don't know what's it called, how the government is going to go about this, but what I think I would really want to see is a very holistic approach, to end insecurity in general. And this is not just because of one incident. People in the Middle Belt, they've been crying, they've been screaming how most of them can't go to their farmlands. People also in northern states, they cannot go to their farmlands. They can't do anything because why? There is just some level of impunity that these people have gone to set camps there. They can't even go to their farmlands. They can't do anything. These are cries that have been on for years. For years. At least the whole 8 years of President Buhari's tenure. We had a lot of people screaming and saying that, oh, we can't go to our farmlands. We can't do anything. Fulani headsmen have taken over, our farmlands, and they are looting, unaliving people and all of that. And yet nothing has been done. It is just so sad that it is still spilling over, to this new tenor. So I like that everybody's talking about it, but beyond the talk, I would love to see a very holistic approach, meaning that in the end, we're not going to be hearing these people have a free reign, and just be doing things the way they please because they think Nigeria is their town. I've said this thing in my videos online. I'm going to say it here. We need to be intentional about us knowing ourselves, our true identity. A proper census has to be carried out in this country where people are properly identified. Because guess what? A lot of people are infiltrating our country in the guise of, oh, they are from the north. Not all of those people that speak Hausa are from the north. And for the northern people, I have said it in my video, I'll say it here again. It is in your hands to call out these people. It is in your hands. You have to call out these people. You have to start fishing out the bad eggs because we cannot turn a blind eye. This is getting too much. And if we continue like this, it's just going to be chaos. And we don't want that in this country. So I like the call for justice, but beyond the justice, there are other parts of Nigeria that have been crying, they've been screaming. So let it be a very, very holistic approach to solving this problem. And hopefully we might just end this issue of insecurity by God's grace. Abi, I'll take a break. When I come back from that break, let's talk taxations and our tax reform. Stay with us.
Life is made up of moments, some that fill us with joy, others that test our strength. Welcome to Heartlines. This is our space to explore the highs and lows of human connection, the love, the heartbreak, and resilience that shapes our life. From relationships to friendships, parenting to partnerships, and so much more. Every week, we share stories and conversations that define us, navigating love, separations, the struggles of parenting, dealing with anxiety and managing the pressures and stress of life. Real conversations that bring us closer, helping us heal, grow, and connect. So join me Mondays through Fridays at 10 p.m. for Heartlines, the show where we'll connect hearts, have real conversations with real people, one story at a time.
All right, thanks for staying tuned. Now, despite the importance of taxation, public understanding of tax policies remains very low. Many Nigerians are uncertain about their tax obligations, how the reforms will impact their earnings, and whether they will benefit from a more transparent and efficient tax system. So today's show seeks to provide clarity by examining the key provisions of the proposed tax reforms, their impact on individuals and businesses, how citizens can engage with the tax processes and hold policymakers accountable. We also hope to understand Nigeria's tax system, get an overview of the tax, the key tax types, that's personal income tax, the VAT, the company income tax, etc. We also need to understand the challenges, or we hope to understand the challenges in tax collection and administration as we seek clarity on the tax to GDP ratio and why Nigeria lags other African nations. So joining me to shed more light is Etuk, right? He's the programs manager at Order Paper, and he's joined me via Zoom. Thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you so much. It's a pleasure to be here. Etuk.
Okay. Uko. Sorry, apologies. I'm sure I apologized ahead of time. Uko Etuk. Thank you for joining me.
You did.
All right,
you told me I was going to get it wrong, but let me apologize ahead of time.
Yeah, so. But Uko, tell me something, right? How well are we doing in terms of taxes in Nigeria? Because I know that many, would I say, in 2013, right, there was a huge consciousness, right, in Lagos State. No, not 2013. I think it started from maybe 2011 or so. There was a huge consciousness in Lagos State, right, where influencers were being used, different people were being used to tell people about the importance of paying your taxes and how it's going to benefit you as a citizen. I know Lagos State, you know, to some extent, a lot of people actually, you know, caught up with that fire and, you know, started paying taxes and all of that. But I don't know how well we're doing as a nation in terms of taxes. How well are we doing in Nigeria?
Well, in terms of Nigeria's performance of taxes, let's benchmark it against the GDP. When you say tax to GDP ratio, that would give you a good projection when you look at it side by side with other African countries, and I'll be very tailored to look at it with other African countries. When you look at it, I think we are not really doing well. Overall, when you look at Nigeria's tax to GDP ratio, it hovers around about 6%, which is about the lowest in the world. This is well below the average tax most of the developing countries. And significantly, many of them are African countries. So when you look at a country like South Africa is around 28%. You look at Kenya is around 17%. Or you look at our next door neighbor, English-speaking country, Ghana is about 13%. So comparatively, we're not really doing well in terms of taxes generally.
Wow. That's very,
Lagos has that.
And what are the implications of the fact that we are not doing well in terms of our taxes? What are the implication on the economy?
So what this does in terms of its significance to the economy is that it hampers on our ability to have sufficient funds, government to have sufficient funds for development, whether you're looking at services, you're looking at infrastructures, you're looking at human capital development. So generally affect our planning and ability to do projections over time. And so the significance has very huge impact in our economy. And for a country like Nigeria that is largely oil dependent in terms of revenue, this too makes us very vulnerable economically to, you know, the whims and, you know, caprices of what happens in OPEC, you know, where there's a fluctuation in the prices of petroleum product. And then that has a direct to help us in terms of our ability to be able to plan ahead, in terms of our ability to be able to insulate the economy against price fluctuations
Okay.
and all that. So the significance are huge, and they are almost largely very negative.
So, Uko, I want to ask a question around, even the way our taxes are captured in this country. So, over the years, we've seen that, there's no, okay, apart from the LIRS, FIRS, and the VATs, right? Even the VATs, I'm not 100% sure if we truly go follow through VAT through and through, but, but the question is, there are a lot of informal tax collections that we see across, our country, different people, be it in the marketplaces, on our roads and all of that, right? Is it possible that this GDP per tax ratio, tax per GDP ratio, is it possible that that number is low? Again, because of the way, we have not properly structured the collection process for taxes in Nigeria. Is it a possibility? Or is the fact that people are not just paying? Did you get the question?
So the thing is, we have two sectors. We have the formal sector and
the informal sector.
You were breaking at some point, but maybe we have two sectors, which is the formal sector and the informal sector. And significantly, our tax collection has been mostly focused on the formal sector, which means it leaves a good chunk of the Nigerian populace who are predominantly within the informal sector. Now, what that happens is that the government lacks the technological infrastructure to be able to do a lot of the collections of taxes in the informal sector. And that leaves a chunk of us, of the Nigerian citizens, who are not taxed. So this has significant and very lasting impact on our economy, where a good chunk of the Nigerian citizens who are using the Nigerian infrastructures across the various cities and states in the federation do not pay taxes. And so this is an area that we need to really look at on how to bring in these people into the tax bracket and be able to tax them generally. I've lost most of the things you said.
Oh, okay. Well, you are in line with the you are in line with the response. Yeah, it's just the only thing I'm saying is that you see this informal. You said they lack the structure, but there's a structure in this informal setting that they are able to capture, and I dare say that those people even pay more when it comes to, you understand, when it comes to daily taxes that they pay. They pay a lot of money. I mean, you would hear the commercial bus drivers, you hear the market women, even the people, I hear even all these dispatch riders and the people that are even hawking or something that have different shades, they are actually daily paying taxes every day. So is it that it is the lack of structure, or they have intentionally kept it informal so that, it benefits a few? It's not captured into the, what's it called, the national, will I call it the national cookie jar or the national income? We're having
so the
trouble.
problem is what you've just raised. It's also the problem of corruption. It's also the problem of corruption. I don't know if you can hear me.
I can hear you now. Okay, I think we're having troubles.
Okay, it's the problem of corruption. So let's look at the challenges that we face in this tax issue. Can you hear me now?
I can hear you. Go ahead.
Can you hear me now? I can hear you. Okay, so it's a problem of corruption, where there's corruption within the tax administration and also the aspect of inefficiency. For instance, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you. Go ahead, please.
I can hear you if you can hear me.
I can hear you. Go ahead.
Beautiful. So I was raising the issues of transparency within the collection systems of who collects and the returns and all those things. So that breeds corruption. So when I talked about infrastructure, that basically spoke to the use of digital technology in our ability to collect and also identify the taxpayers. where we are able to use technology to be able to eliminate much of human interaction in terms of our tax collection processes and be able to harness it in such a way and manner that it reduces corruption within the system. And so within this informal sector, yes, there are collections, but the problem is, are they usually remitted to the government, whether it is at the local level or at the state level? Now, because there are no well streamlined technological infrastructures that are put in place, these are direct one-on-one individual collections. They are prone to a lot of corruptions. They are prone to a lot of inefficiency. They are prone to a lot of lack of transparency within the system. And that ultimately affects what gets to the government at the end of the day.
Yeah, that's also, so that was what, to my point, was the fact that, are you sure that they have not deliberately left it that way? You understand? Because if it is not for lack of, it is not for the lack of maybe expertise or whatever to formalize that structure so that it can be captured in the government's purse. But I feel like, you know, they have left it that way. But let us move on to this tax reform, right, that is being currently pushed. What exactly are the key features of the tax reforms? You know, what are the proposed changes in the tax laws? What are the potential adjustments to the tax rates? You know, and, you know, let's start from there, then we then move on with the conversation.
Okay. Thank you very much. In that regard, like you just know, recently the House of Reps had, passed that bill, that's the Nigerian tax bill, and part of those things that really emphasized on was the VAT, the VTA, which they had said it would remain at 7.5%, which was what it was. I recall they had moved it from 5% in 2020 to 7.5%, so it remains that, as it were. And they have also gone ahead to make a lot of, significant changes in that regard, which is very commendable on their own part. But the prominent features we are looking at is the fact that these tax reforms would introduce a lot of digital taxations. The idea is to be able to eliminate a lot of human interaction and rather use more of technology to be able to ensure that it is very efficient, is transparent, and largely corruption-free. And also another aspect would be to incentivize SMEs, where part of it is that if a company doesn't make up to 25 million per annum, that company would have some level of exemption or incentive in terms of payment of taxes too. Then also in terms of personal income taxations, they're also looking at that people with low income earners would be able to have some form of exemptions from being taxed based on their personal income taxes. But top of it would be that a lot of big companies, you could call the e-commerce companies, the social media, you could name them the Facebook, the Googles, and the likes, would be want to start making a lot of revenue in terms of what happens within the social media space, the digital space. And that's an aspect that the government is really looking at taking advantage of. And then another aspect would be the capital gain taxes, which focuses on, gain made from high value assets. You can look at the real estate and, such huge investments where there are a lot of abilities to make a lot of revenue in that regard. And then maybe the wealth taxes and all those things. So these are the key features we are looking at. But overall, the idea is to be able to make it very efficient, make it reduce the aspect of double taxation, but more importantly, make sure that the common man who doesn't earn much is not overburdened with a lot of tax-related burdens. Okay.
That's interesting about that common man matter, because the common man, they are being taxed every day on the roads and on our streets. But hey, that was speaking to my last point. But you see, so what are the measures that we want to take right now? If we said, okay, the government was being serious about tax evasions and, you know, all this revenue leakage. We've touched one, which is very huge. This informal sector, in my opinion, is a very strong revenue leakage point, but I don't see the government even willing to want to even seal up that, you know, that part, right? So what are the measures that the government is taking right now to ensure that, you know, tax evasions, all of those things become, you know, maybe goes to our, becomes non-existent in Nigeria? Is that possible?
Well, we are getting there. It's a journey, you know. So provided we've started sooner or later, we'll get there. But part of those things they are doing to be able to address tax evasion, which is a major problem in terms of revenue leakages for the government, is first and foremost digital tax administration. So that has informed a lot of you know, things bordering on centralized billing systems for a lot of states and, of course, the government, where they're beginning to create these processes where the entire tax gamut is being digitized. Now, the idea is that with that, it reduces a lot of human interaction. It reduces a lot of the inefficiency that is associated with human interaction. It also closes the leakages for corruption and the rest of it. Another thing is the mandatory TIN, the tax identification number. This is to be able to have ensure that every taxpayer has a face, has an identity where we could clearly identify that you are the taxpayer, that in the month of March, this is the tax you have paid, and that we can always have a record of your taxation over a period of time. So that way, there's a strict regulation requiring that businesses, as much as individuals, register for a taxpayer identification number. Now, what this does is that it would ensure that all taxpayers, including those within the informal sector, are properly identified and they are also taxed. Another aspect would be increased use of data analysis, where the authorities would increase the use of big data and artificial intelligence, that's AI, to detect patterns of tax evasion. These are, you know, measures that are used in other European countries to be able to ensure that there's a high reduction in terms of tax evasion and the rest of it. And then, of course, tax audits would be also another aspect. Now, there is a stronger focus on tax audits, both for the large corporations and individuals, to ensure compliance. Now, it would be part of what government would do to increase resources and monitor businesses that may be under-reporting their earnings or evading taxes. And then, of course, the anti-corruption measures, which will include the use of anti-corruption agencies of government, where government will be working to strengthen the anti-corruption efforts within tax administration. Now, this includes stricter penalties for corrupt officials, and of course, efforts to improve transparency on how tax revenues are collected and used. So, with these measures properly put in place, I'm sure that we will be able to have a significant reduction in terms of tax evasion in the country.
Okay, well said. So we'll go on a very short break. When we come back from that break, we'll share more insight and continue the conversation. Stay with me.
Life is made up of moments, some that fill us with joy, others that test our strength. Welcome to Heartlines. This is our space to explore the highs and lows of human connection, the love, the heartbreak, and resilience that shapes our life. From relationships to friendships, parenting to partnerships, and so much more. Every week, we share stories and conversations that define us, navigating love, separations, the struggles of parenting, dealing with anxiety and managing the pressures and stress of life. Real conversations that bring us closer, helping us heal, grow, and connect. So join me Mondays through Fridays at 10 p.m. for Heartlines, the show where we'll connect hearts, have real conversations with real people, one story at a time.
Thank you for staying tuned. Now, if you just tuned in, we are discussing tax reforms and, of course, the Nigerian citizen, what you need to know. Please let's hear what you have to say. Remember, you can join the conversation. Send us an SMS or WhatsApp to 081-803-84663. Our phone lines are also now open. The numbers to call 07025007749 or 07014242420. Are you paying your taxes? Let's hear what you have to say. You can also join us via WhatsApp video. Just send an add me to the WhatsApp line and you'll be admitted via Zoom. Okay, so thank you, Uko, for staying with us. Uko. My director is shouting in my ear.
Not that right.
Okay, so now I would like to really know what the implications are for citizens and businesses, because I know you've mentioned a little bit more. I just want you to expatiate more on it. Will this tax reform lead to, what's it called, us paying higher or paying lower? Because now there's something about small businesses where we experience multiple taxations. People from the local government, for instance, they come, they bring this. Someone else will come and say, we'll pay for this radio and television license. There are just so many funny things that you see, you know. You also still have to pay personal income tax. You still also have to pay your staff, what's it called, employee taxes, you know. Then you still have to pay your, what's the word now, the one you pay annually. So there are just a lot of it. Is it something that we are going to be seeing it all merge as one, or it is all of these taxes I've mentioned, they are still going to be there, but it will now just be probably maybe digitized in a way that the billing would be paid, but it will be on these different items? Because you touched on centralized billing system. Would we see all of these taxes crushed into one? Or is it going to be the same thing, but it's just going to be better captured with digital platforms?
Okay, so the whole idea of the tax reforms is to have a more, like I said earlier, the idea is to reduce the duplicity of taxations for Nigerians generally. And part of it is to also be able to come up with more efficient way of tax administration. Recall that the tax bill is not just the only bill at the National Assembly. There are 4 bills altogether, 2 of which are the tax bill and, of course, the tax administration bill. Now, that speaks to the ability of the authorities to be able to manage these taxes more efficiently, but more importantly, too, the ability in the collation process where they ensure that the taxpayers are not tasked, reduces the incidence of multiplicity of taxes. And so for the average citizen, the idea is that, especially when you look at from the personal income tax aspect, and I said earlier on that for people who earned, their income is slightly lower, the whole reform is to ensure that they are not heavily taxed, more like some exemption. In fact, for SMEs, that earn lower than 25 million per annum, there will be a lot of incentives and tax exemption on their own part. And this is to be able to encourage a lot of SMEs to be able to thrive within the Nigerian economy, to be able to succeed, to be able to do better, and to be able to employ more people. And that has a significant positive impact on the economy.
So for the SMEs, when you talk about 25 million, are we talking turnover or profit? Let's be clear.
Mostly profit.
Are we sure?
Mostly profit. Because at the end, based on your profit, not necessarily turnover.
Not the turnover, right?
Because a lot of turnover, mostly profit, because that's what you're taxed on at the end of the day.
Let's just be clear so that we know how to position ourselves. But okay,
yes, we have to be clear on that.
So let's talk about tax holidays, right? I know that most of these
Yeah.
big corporations, especially when they started partnering with the government to do roads, to do different kinds of projects, community development and all of that, they started having a lot of tax holidays, just to be able to give them those, to settle. How do you think tax holidays would impact our economy? Do you think it will help bring development to our country? Or is it something that we should just completely, eradicate and just, let them pay their taxes and, we'll sort out our infrastructure ourselves?
Well, that's a discourse that the government will make ultimately. But from the look of things so far, when you look at those tax holidays, I think one of the sectors that's really enjoying that is the oil and gas sector, where they have a lot of tax incentives, where they have a lot of tax holidays. And for a large chunk of them, I think the Nigerian economy is trying to recall. I've also said earlier that a chunk of our revenue comes from the oil and gas sector. And so the country, tends to encourage a lot of investment in that sector. And so in doing so, they give a lot of tax holidays to the companies within the oil and gas sector. And it's going to continue from the look of things because there's still a lot of push for investment within that sector. I agree. Most companies too are, in getting involved in a lot of infrastructural development where in the event that government is yet to look at those areas or don't have the resources, to develop those areas, a lot of companies take it upon themselves to, develop those roads and a lot of them. And in return, they get a lot of tax holidays. And so it's a win-win for the government on one hand, and then for those companies. But going forward, I think most of those things have to be reviewed in terms of its duration, in terms of its time frame, of course, in terms of the actual policy that governs that. Reasons being that this on its own has a toll on the tax revenue ultimately, because most of these companies, like you already alluded to, should be paying those taxes directly. And maybe if they're paying those taxes directly, government will be able to handle most of this infrastructure. But yes, like I said earlier, it's a discourse that government will need to review and come up with the best strategic policy for it.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So let's talk legislative oversight and public accountability and the role of the National Assembly in improving and, of course, implementing some of these tax reforms. How do we ensure? Because I've heard people say that a lot of our laws in Nigeria, they are very great on paper, but, implementation has always been an issue. Right? How do we, monitor to be sure that these things are actually being done by the books and all of that? So how do we start to intentionally, draw accountability from the parties? Who are the people that would ensure that some of the implementations of this reform, and how do we intentionally, ask for accountability as in that regard? Yeah.
Okay, that's a double-barrel question, but let me see how to unpack them. So the rule of the National Assembly. The National Assembly has three major rules, which is to make laws, to represent the people, and of course the oversight functions. And so, as regards the tax reforms, it's the duty of the National Assembly to take proposals and debates in respect to tax reforms, and that's what they've been doing for the past few months in respect to the tax bills, the 4 tax-related bills that are at the National Assembly currently. And then with that, they'll now set in to look at scrutiny and the amendments. So lawmakers in the relevant committees, would now scrutinize the details of these tax policies and then conduct a public hearing to invite experts, civil society organizations to be able to look at the economic and social impact of the reforms. Now, these lawmakers will now suggest amendments to address concerns and improve the proposals of the bill. Now, the entire scrutiny process helps to ensure that tax laws are fair, equitable, and responsive to the needs of the economy, as it were, in this case. And then, of course, they follow that up with the approvals and passage of the bill, which is now sent to the president for assent, and then it becomes law. After then, they now set in to do their second function, which is that of oversight. And of course, this is done in terms of in pursuit of the implementation of the actual laws. Don't forget, the oversight must be on the executive arm of government. It could be an agency of government. In this case, it would be the Federal Inland Revenue, which would be renamed to be the Nigerian Revenue Service. These forms the crux of what the rules of the National Assembly would do. And in terms of implementation, it will be part of their duty under oversight functions to be able to follow the arm of government responsible for tax collection, ensure that they do the right thing as stipulated in the law that will subsequently be passed, the bill that will subsequently be passed to become law. And so these are part of their responsibilities in ensuring oversight, implementation, and follow-up to ensure that these are done. But overall, you know that the aspects of implementation rest squarely on the executive arm of government. And so the executive arm of government must have the political will on one hand, and of course, the resource to make sure that these are implemented across the entire gamut as far as the law allows. And so while the National Assembly must play its part of lawmaking and oversight, the core of the implementation rests solely on the executive arm of government.
That's interesting. So what are the penalties for tax evasion that businesses should know and individuals should also know, just in case they are planning not to pay, even after we have discussed it?
Well, yeah, there are always punitive measures, which is, of course, like you rightly said, there are people who are saying, don't mind it, no matter what they do, I'm not paying.
No, because you know why?
Yeah, so,
I've heard this argument, sorry to cut you, Uko. I've heard this argument that Nigeria is the best place to do business, right? And I can tell you for free, it's because, you understand, you are not heavily taxed the way you are taxed in other parts of the world, right? So you hear businessmen say, this is the sweetest place to do business. So now let's start to tell them what the implications are.
And so the implication will start from our ability to be able to aggregate the right data, starting from the identification of the various individuals, or in the case of businesses, the various companies that are doing business within Nigeria. And so we start with the TIN, for starters, the tax identification number, which will give identifiable identity to all businesses as well as individuals. That way, you could easily identify these people and make demands that they pay their taxes. And so a lot of these people who say that, look, Nigeria is a beautiful place to do business is because it is easy to rig the system, so to say, where the government ab initio can't even identify businesses or individuals, as it were, to then make demands for taxation. And so this becomes a major problem. So that's why at the initial stage, I had to speak to the digital infrastructure, what would now create identity for every business and individual to be able to be identified. And with that identity, it behoves now the tax authorities to now make demands on these individuals, where they give them notifications on when they are due for taxations and the rest of it. Followed up with that, in situations where these businesses or individuals refuse to pay their taxes, it now behoves on the authorities to now follow up with, court cases or different forms of enforcement as stipulated in the law, to be able to ensure the enforcement and collection of taxes from these individuals. And these are aspects that we really need to dwell on largely, because when you go to other Western countries, you see that there's a lot of emphasis in terms of enforcement of taxation. And this helps in terms of revenue generation for those countries. And so in doing this, what that does is that it gives a solid infrastructure, tax infrastructure for that country. It also creates a tax net that keeps expanding by the day, because a lot of businesses or individuals are brought into that tax net. And then it creates a lot of revenue for that country. So part of what we should look at in terms of reforms, tax reforms going forward, would be the enforcement to be able to get that revenue into our tax bracket. Yes.
Absolutely. Okay, so as we are trying to wrap up the conversation, right? What would be that one thing that you would like to, just let people know? I know that for the role of citizens, it's important that we stay informed, we ensure that we follow through and, just continue to monitor what is going on, especially at the National Assembly, and just be in the know, right, of the things that are happening. But what would be that one thing you would also want to let people know, maybe something that we haven't touched on? I recently registered a few companies, and I remember that my guy at the CAC kept on telling me, "Ma, you have to go and apply for your TIN numbers, because now it's now a rule that you have to be, I think within 6 weeks or something, upon collection of the certificate or something." I can't remember the exact time frame now, but these are now things that are being intentionally pushed, right? Even from, if you want to go to the bank, there are certain documentations that they would ask, there are just a lot going on. But if you had one thing to say, I would say to the public, what would you say? And to the government, how easy can digitizing this structure, how easy would it make it look for them? Because I just somehow feel like government shy away from putting digital structures to things, because it's also a way not to be able to then rig the system. Do you understand? Because if it is properly structured, they also cannot, cheat the system. So that's why I feel like government always shy away. This is just my personal opinion. I feel like most times they shy away from putting technology and just leveraging technology to solve some of these challenges, because I feel like they're so easy to solve. So if you had something to say to the government, right, what would that be? If you had something to say to the citizens, what would that be?
Yeah, in terms of what you just, the analogy you just drew in terms of your visit to CSE, we must give kudos to government for what they have done recently. In fact, I don't know when you did that incorporation of that company, because in recent times, when you're doing incorporation with CSE, alongside with your certificate of incorporation, your TIN number is clearly displayed on your certificate. So they have gone a step further, not to just ask you to go and get your TIN number. They ensure that they generate the TIN number for you, and it's clearly on your certificate of incorporation. And that's something we must commend governments for, where they are now beginning to use those technological infrastructure to be able to tie incorporation of companies with TIN, that's tax identification number, and it's really commendable. But what I would speak to citizens in this regard, like you rightly alluded to, the first one, which is to stay informed about tax policies. Another thing I would say is that they should engage their lawmakers by submitting concerns and recommendations. This will help them ensure that most of these policies or laws, as it were, take into consideration the feelings and concerns of the people at the long run. And so submit petitions where necessary, public consultations, engage with CSOs, ensure that there's a strong engagement with the lawmakers at all times. And then also monitor government spending to ensure that the tax revenues are used efficiently. Because part of the reasons why a lot of citizens shy away from paying taxes is because that they feel that the revenues are not well utilized by the government, that are being frittered away by government officials. But if the citizens are more engaged in monitoring government spending and ensuring that these tax revenues are well utilized for the greater good of the people, then I'm sure that a lot of them will be more willing to pay their taxes. Another aspect would be we should also look at the impact of this tax policy. What impact is it having on the citizens? Does it ensure fairer tax policies, increase accountability? Does it strengthen trust in the system? Does it improve governance? And if these boxes are all checked, then it is a go in the right direction, and we should follow it up with a lot of monitoring, a lot of engagement with our lawmakers, and we must stay informed as citizens at all times.
Thank you so much. That's a fantastic way to give your parting shots. Thank you, Uko. Etuk. I got the name finally. Thank you for your time. All right, so tax reforms, right? You know how you people are always shouting, abroad, in the UK, in the US. It is because of taxes. That is why you are seeing all those beautiful things that are happening, right? So it's very important for you to understand that tax reforms offer an opportunity to enhance Nigeria's revenue generation. It will also reduce economic inequalities and drive national development. However, their successes depend on effective implementation and enforcement of the reforms, a transparent and fair tax system that does not overburden citizens, strong legislative oversight to ensure accountability, and active public participation in tax discussions to safeguard citizens' interests. Of course, this episode, today's show, provided valuable insight into how tax reforms will shape Nigeria's economic future and what citizens need to know to navigate these changes effectively. And my guest really did justice to the conversation. Please, let's be conscious about paying our taxes. Let's be conscious about, embracing that idea of tax payment. And then when we are done paying it, we can then hold, we choke them. We hold our leaders accountable. We must hold them by the jugular and tell them, do this with our money because we have paid. When we have paid, we now have the right, you understand, to make sure that they are accountable to us and they spend the money in developing our country. I hope that is a deal. All right, thank you so much for watching, and thank you again to my guest, Mr. Etuk. He did an amazing job. Now, before I go, ensure you subscribe to our YouTube channel. You can interact with us further, drop your comments, and most importantly, follow all our social media engagements. Remember to like, share, comment, and invite your families and friends to watch and follow the conversation. If you missed our quote for today, it says the new rates proposed in the Nigeria tax bill exempts individuals who earn 800,000 naira or less annually from paying any income tax. In effect, every minimum wage earner in Nigeria will be exempted from personal income tax, and that is from the proposed bill. I'll see you guys tomorrow at 8 p.m. Enjoy the rest of your evening.
Nigeria, by extension Africa, battles a growing youthful population, and with little or no meaningful engagement, leaves a ticking time bomb on our hands. We are a blessed continent with great wealth, both in people and material. Our focus on ways remains driving conversations that affects us all. Topics in the news, social concerns, politics, leadership, governance, empowerment, resource management, conflict management, finance, SME sustainability, technological innovation, food security, health, education, brain drain, our well-being, citizenship, and much more. Our goal is to continuously drive these conversations, keep them burning at the table to effect a positive change, both for our nation and continent. Ways, what are you saying, has a secret ingredient that completes the conversation every single episode, and that ingredient is you. Our past conversations shaped our yesterday. To shape our tomorrow, we must keep talking. So, I want to hear you. Be a part of our live conversations Mondays through Fridays, and let's all have our say.